So, I want you to picture an archetypal gray alien. You know the one, right?
Oh, definitely. The massive bulbous head, those huge unblinking black almond eyes.
Exactly, the frail little body. But now, picture that exact same alien holding two theatrical masks on wooden sticks.
Okay, that is a pretty bizarre image.
Right. And one mask is the face of a beautiful, alluring human woman, and the other is this grinning, just terrifying red demon.
Which is such a striking visual,
Right.
and it perfectly encapsulates the core thesis we are exploring today in this deep dive.
Yeah, we are digging into Jacques Vallee's landmark research, his book Passport to Magonia. And I mean, that single image is really the key to unlocking what might be the greatest deception in human history.
It really is, because the argument here runs completely counter to the mainstream narrative. I mean, the idea is that the phenomenon we currently label as, aliens or
Some
extraterrestrial.
nuts and bolts spaceships.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That it's actually the exact same underlying force as ancient fairies, medieval demons, and religious apparitions.
Which is wild. So the phenomenon itself hasn't changed its nature over the last several thousand years.
Not at all. The only thing that changes are the masks it wears. It actively shifts its presentation to perfectly match the cultural, religious, and even technological expectations of whoever is seeing it.
So look, if you've spent years researching Roswell or Area 51 or listening to whistleblowers talk about recovered spacecraft, this might feel incredibly frustrating to hear.
Oh, absolutely. It challenges the entire modern framework.
It does. But stick with us, because when you view the physical trace evidence through this historical lens, a much more terrifying reality emerges. We are on a mission today to completely shatter the modern assumption of the space age alien.
And to prove these entities are just, wearing cultural masks, we first have to look at how their supposed advanced technology always suspiciously matches the imagination of the era in which they appear.
Suspiciously is the perfect word for it.
Right. We constantly project our current technological peak onto the unknown. Whenever an anomalous event happens, we filter it through whatever cutting-edge science we have at that very moment.
Like, okay, take the famous 1952 Palenque tomb discovery. Archaeologists uncovered this Mayan sarcophagus lid showing a man seemingly operating this complex flaming machinery.
Oh, yeah. And then that Soviet writer, Alexander Kazantsev, looked at it and argued it looked identically like a 1960s space capsule.
Yes, complete with pedals and breathing tubes and everything.
Or look at the Erajumondogu statues in Japan. Those date all the way back to 4300 BC.
And they look entirely like astronauts in pressure suits.
Exactly. They have these oversized goggles and breathing filters. And we look at that today and say, aha, ancient astronauts.
But that is the trap, right?
It's totally a trap. We only see astronauts because we live in the space age. What is infinitely more revealing is what happens when you analyze sightings from an era just before our own.
Like the 1897 wave.
Yes, the massive wave of anomalous airship sightings across the United States. Thousands of people saw things in the sky.
And the technology described by these witnesses wasn't, anti-gravity propulsion or silent lasers.
No, it was propellers, massive turbine wheels, and compressed air engines.
Because that was the peak of tech back then. I mean, the 1897 accounts are completely absurd when you put them under a microscope.
They really are.
There's this amazing report from a Mr. Barclay in Texas. He's woken up in the middle of the night by his dog howling, right? He goes outside into his pasture and sees this huge, oblong ship with primitive wings and brilliant lights hovering right over his property.
Just parked right there.
Right there. He grabs his rifle, walks up to it, and is met by a totally ordinary-looking man who tells him to put the gun down and says, "Call me Smith."
Smith, of course.
Call me Smith. And Smith doesn't want to conquer Earth. He doesn't offer to share galactic wisdom or warn us about nuclear weapons.
What does he want?
He asks Mr. Barclay for some lubricating oil, a couple of cold chisels, and some bluestone for his dirigible.
For his dirigible. Unbelievable.
And he even tries to pay with a normal $10 bill before zipping off, claiming he's headed to Greece.
Which forces us to ask a very uncomfortable question about the whole extraterrestrial hypothesis.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this. Because if these are super advanced space travelers crossing light years of cosmic emptiness, navigating through wormholes or whatever.
Why are they using 19th century air compressors?
Exactly. And asking a Texas farmer for oil and chisels. It's like a time traveler bringing a quantum computer to the Middle Ages, but stopping to ask a blacksmith for a spare USB cable. It makes absolutely no sense.
It makes zero sense from a nuts and bolts perspective.
Also, wait, what even is bluestone?
So bluestone was just copper sulfate, which was heavily used in primitive primitive 19th century telegraph batteries.
Seriously, why would an interstellar craft need telegraph battery juice?
The answer is it wouldn't. The technology isn't actually extraterrestrial. It is a reflection of the human subconscious.
So they're just pulling from our own minds.
Right. The phenomenon always presents itself just at the edge of our current comprehension. Think back to medieval Japan in 1235.
Oh, General Yoritsume's army, right?
Yeah, his army saw mysterious swaying lights doing loops in the sky all night. And the experts of the day, the scholars, they investigated and concluded it was just the wind making the stars sway.
Because that was the only framework they had. The phenomenon just disguises itself in the mundane beliefs of the time.
Exactly.
But how exactly is this happening? I mean, is there some physical intelligence in the atmosphere scanning our cultural zeitgeist and literally building an airship out of thin air just to mess with us?
That is the crux of Vallee's investigation. It appears to be an intelligence that interacts with our consciousness to generate a physical manifestation.
So it's co-created.
Essentially, yes. It reaches into the collective human mind, finds the symbols we associate with the unknown or advanced, and puts on that exact suit of clothes to interact with us.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. Because if their technology is an absurd projection of our own minds, their behavior is even weirder. And it brings us to my favorite part of this deep dive.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
The food. I'm struggling to connect the dots here because if astrobiologists today are waiting for aliens to land in Washington, D.C. with complex mathematical codes...
To prove their intelligence, yeah?
Right. How do they explain beings landing in rural Wisconsin just to griddle pancakes? That sounds less like a scientific survey and more like an absurdist prank. What am I missing?
You're referring to the famous Eagle River incident with Joe Simonton. And to understand why it isn't a prank, we have to look past the modern UFO framework and look at the underlying ritual.
Okay, for you listening who might not know this case, Joe Simonton was a farmer in Wisconsin. In 1961, he is approached by a hovering metallic craft.
Just right in his yard.
A hatch opens, and the occupants, who look like small, dark-haired men, indicate they need water. So Joe goes to his pump, gets them a jug of pure well water, and in exchange, he watches them cook him 3 buckwheat pancakes on a flameless grill.
A very specific detail, the flameless grill.
Yeah. He even gave the pancakes to investigators. The Air Force actually analyzed them, and they were just buckwheat, bran, and water.
Completely mundane ingredients.
So I have to stop you here. If the Air Force analyzed these pancakes and found normal, earthly ingredients, wouldn't a rational investigator just say Joe Simonton made them himself on his own stove for attention? Why are we leaping to interdimensional phenomena?
Because of the striking anthropological patterns embedded in his story. To a folklorist, that is not a story about a fabricated UFO encounter.
No.
No, and it certainly isn't a sample-gathering mission from Mars. It is a deeply ancient symbolic ritual. If we look at Celtic folklore, specifically tales of the Gentry.
The old Irish term for fairies, right?
Right, or elves. We see exact parallels. The Gentry were not tiny, glowing pixies with gossamer wings like we see in modern cartoons.
Right, they weren't Tinkerbell.
Exactly. They were described in the old texts as a tall, aristocratic military class who traveled in cloud ships.
Cloud ships? Wow.
The local legends explicitly state they drank pure water, eat fresh meat, and they emphatically never use salt.
Which is crazy because the Air Force analysis of Simonton's pancakes noted specifically as a weird anomaly that there was 0 salt in them.
It all lines up. And in Brittany, there are age-old legends of entities called the Fions.
Oh, the cave dwellers.
Yeah, they lived in secluded caves and would exchange magical, inexhaustible buckwheat cakes with human women.
Wait, buckwheat cakes, just like Simonton's pancakes.
Exactly the same. The exchange of food is known in anthropology as the rite of hospitality.
So it's a contract.
Precisely. Sharing food is a sacred, binding contract in ancient lore. The old mythological rule is if you eat fairy food, you belong to them.
You are tied to their realm and can never leave Elfland.
You're stuck. So the pancake exchange in Wisconsin wasn't random absurdity. It was the phenomenon executing a classic mythological contract.
Just wrapped in the disguise of a 1960s flying saucer.
Exactly. It adapted to what Joe Simonton would accept.
Okay, so we've established they manipulate our minds with these cultural projections and engage in ritualistic food trades. But a hallucination or a fairy shouldn't be able to physically burn the ground, right?
You would think not, no.
Do these encounters actually leave behind empirical, measurable evidence? because UFO investigators are always obsessed with the physical trace.
They absolutely do leave physical proof. But again, the proof left by modern UFO encounters is virtually identical to the proof left by ancient folklore entities.
That is wild.
The physical environment reacts the exact same way, regardless whether the witness thinks they saw a fairy or a spaceship.
Let's look at the modern UFO nests, then. In 1966, in Tully, Australia, a farmer saw a blue-gray craft rise out of a swamp.
The classic saucer shape.
Right, and when he waded out to look, he found a nest where the swamp reeds had been flattened in a perfect clockwise circle.
And then there's the 1965 case in Ohio.
Yes. A farmer found a circular depression in his field where the wheat roots were sucked entirely out of the ground.
Just violently pulled up.
And in 1968, in Argentina, investigators found a UFO landing site with calcined earth. And growing right inside that burn circle were giant, 3-foot-wide white mushrooms.
And when you say calcined earth, that means the soil was heated to such extreme, unnatural temperatures that it completely lost its normal chemical structure.
So it basically turned to sterile powder?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Now take that modern empirical evidence and compare it to the ancient, widespread European belief in fairy rings.
Oh, of course.
For centuries, folklore has insisted that fairies leave circular depressions or scorched marks in the grass where they dance at night.
And what grows perfectly along the edges of these flattened circles?
Giant mushrooms, which the legends claim the fairies used to sit on.
Just picture the scenario for a second. You're a modern UFO investigator. You've got a Geiger counter, you're wearing a suit, and you're staring at a circular burn mark in a field, carefully bagging soil samples into glass vials.
Very scientific.
But centuries ago, a peasant looked at that exact same flattened circle, felt the same sterile dirt, and terrified, warned his children not to step inside the fairy ring.
It is the exact same physical evidence.
Just wearing an entirely different cultural mask. Even back in 1789, Erasmus Darwin, who was Charles Darwin's grandfather, he wrote a poem trying to rationalize fairy rings as electrical cylinders shooting down from storm clouds to burn the grass.
We've always desperately tried to force this phenomenon into whatever current scientific framework we have handy.
It really highlights our need to control the narrative. But this raises an urgent question. What happens if you do step into that ring? Or if you actively interact with these entities?
Because if we drop the friendly pancake exchanges, the deep dive takes a much darker turn here.
Yeah, it's not all pancakes and dancing.
We have to look at the mechanisms of abductions, paralysis, and time distortion.
If you interact with them, you are rarely in control. Let's talk about the paralysis weapons. In 1964, the Cisco Grove case in California.
This one is terrifying.
A hunter is literally trapped in a tree while a robot-like entity drops its jaw open and emits a knockout smoke to try and paralyze him.
And before that, in 1952, the Florida Scoutmaster case.
Right. A man approaches a hovering craft in the woods and is knocked completely unconscious by a drifting red mist.
It sounds like advanced alien weaponry, right?
Totally. But then you go back to 1837 in London with the terrifying attacks of Spring-Heeled Jack.
Oh, that's a perfect parallel.
He was described as a tall entity in a metallic helmet and tight, shiny clothes, who would shoot blue flames or gas into the faces of women.
Knocking them completely unconscious.
Right, before mounding away with impossible anti-gravity leaps.
The mechanism of control is completely identical. You can also look at the historical legends of the Celtic Indians in Mexico.
What were they called? The Eccles.
The Eccles, exactly. They've long feared these entities. 3-foot-tall, black, hairy humanoids who are said to fly through the air with rocket packs on their backs.
Rocket packs in ancient legends.
Yes. And the Eccles paralyze locals and abduct them into deep subterranean caves. The descriptions are terrifyingly similar to modern accounts of hostile, small alien beings rendering people helpless.
And those abductions lead to what is easily the most mind-bending part of all this, time distortion.
Ah, yes, missing time.
In 1968, the Vital case in Argentina, a husband and wife are driving down a normal road. They get enveloped in a dense, unnatural fog, fall instantly asleep, and wake up to find their car parked on a dirt road in Mexico.
It is 48 hours later.
2 whole days, their car's paint was totally scorched off, and they had absolutely no memory of the missing 2 days of their lives.
That concept of missing time is a foundational hallmark of the UFO abduction experience. People return thinking minutes have passed, only to find the clock says otherwise.
But again, this exact mechanism is a hallmark of the fairy faith.
Think of the ancient Chinese legend of Wang Che. He wanders into the mountains, watches some ancient men playing chess in a cave, and is given a simple date stone to put in his mouth. And know what happens? When he finally reaches down to pick up his wooden axe to leave, the handle has turned entirely to dust. Centuries had passed in what felt to him like a lazy afternoon.
That's insane. Or the
Yep.
Welsh tale of Gittleback, right?
Yeah, the little boy who wanders off to dance with the fairies. He returns home thinking he's only been gone a single day, and his heartbroken mother tells him he's been missing for 2 whole years.
It's the classic Rip Van Winkle effect. But what is staggering to me is the physics of it.
Precisely. The staggering realization here, for you listening, is that these ancient, completely uneducated peasant tales perfectly describe the relativity of time centuries before Albert Einstein was even born.
How did they know?
Exactly. How did a medieval farmer, whose entire concept of time was tied to the rising and setting of the sun, conceptualize that time could move differently for different beings in different environments?
They couldn't have.
Not unless they were experiencing a genuine external phenomenon that manipulated space-time.
Which brings us to the ultimate question. If this phenomenon has access to time-bending physics, paralyzing agents, and the ability to seamlessly pull us out of our reality, what is its endgame?
That is the big one.
If they aren't scientists studying our soil, what are they doing? The deep dive takes us to the most profound realization in Vallee's work.
That the secret Commonwealth of beings has been actively shaping human religion and society for millennia.
To understand how they shape destiny, we have to look at how they interact with our belief systems, and the data on this is just wild.
It really is when you trace it back.
In 840 AD, Agobard, the Archbishop of Lyon, had to personally step in to save 4 people from being stoned to death by a furious mob. Why? Because the mob genuinely believed these 4 people had fallen out of a cloud ship from the magical land of Magonia.
Sent by weather wizards to steal their crops.
Exactly. Or look at the theological texts, like Father Sinistrari's 17th century manuscript De Demonialitate. He meticulously documents the activities of incubi and succubi.
And when you read Sinistrari's accounts, it is vital to notice that the demons aren't just vague spiritual concepts or bad dreams.
They are profoundly physical.
They throw actual stones, they steal physical clothes, they make heavy wooden tables disappear and reappear. Classic poltergeist activity.
Just tearing up the physical environment.
And more importantly, they engage in forced sexual encounters and attempt to create hybrid children with humans.
Which perfectly parallels modern alien abduction accounts.
Like the famous Antonio Villas-Boas case in Brazil. He reported being dragged aboard a craft and forced to interact with a female entity to produce a hybrid child.
The script is the exact same, only the cast of characters has been updated.
But it's not just demons and abductions. Sometimes the phenomenon presents as angels and miracles, fundamentally altering the course of entire societies.
Take the 1879 apparition at Knock in Ireland. In the pouring rain, 14 people saw life-sized figures bathed in a brilliant golden light hovering at the gable of the local church.
The figures were entirely silent.
And despite the heavy rain, the ground beneath the glowing figures remained completely dry. Or the Lady of Guadalupe apparition in Mexico in 1531.
Another massive cultural turning point.
A poor indigenous man named Juan Diego hears unearthly sweet music, sees a glowing lady surrounded by golden rays on a hill, and is given impossible blooming Castilian roses in the dead of winter.
And interestingly, the native word she supposedly used for herself was Telcotlaxopia.
Meaning stone serpent, right?
Yes, which the Spanish misinterpreted as Guadalupe.
So what does this all mean? We need to define this clearly. If you take away the religious context from the Knock apparition and the Guadalupe event...
If you strip away the dogma.
Right. If you just look at the raw data of glowing, hovering figures, animate beings present, unearthly music, and physical traces left behind like dry ground or impossible roses, they read exactly like Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
A close encounter of the third kind being a UFO sighting where visible occupants or entities are present.
Exactly. I mean, it's undeniable.
The mechanism at play here is that the phenomenon acts as a mirror. Think of it like a highly advanced AI algorithm that feeds you the content you're most likely to engage with.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to look at it.
In the Middle Ages, the algorithm fed humans demons to enforce religious piety and fear. It gave the suffering Irish Catholics a divine miracle at Knock when they desperately needed hope and solidarity.
And today?
Today, in our tech-obsessed post-atomic era, where we look to the stars for salvation rather than the church, the algorithm feeds us sleek spaceships and extraterrestrial scientists to enforce our worship of technology.
So it gives us what we expect.
The phenomenon shapes human destiny by reinforcing our deepest cultural beliefs and steering our societal development. It is a control system.
It's a control system. Okay, let's pull all these threads together for you. From ancient Japanese dogu statues wearing pressure suits to visitors trading buckwheat pancakes in Wisconsin.
From fairy rings and giant mushrooms.
To Spring-Heel Jack's paralyzing gas, all the way to the glowing apparitions of Knock. We are not dealing with a series of isolated random events.
No, and we are certainly not dealing with the sudden invasion of scientists from Mars.
According to Vallee's sources, we are dealing with the secret Commonwealth, a permanent parallel environment that coexists right alongside us in the shadows of our reality.
It has always been here.
And it continually manipulates us, wearing whatever mask works best to capture our attention in the present era.
It is a profound shift in perspective. It forces us to realize that our modern scientific explanation of UFOs as extraterrestrial vehicles might just be another fairy tale we're telling ourselves.
We are just as captivated by the illusion as the peasant staring at a fairy ring.
Exactly.
Which leaves you with one final lingering question to mull over today. We've seen that the phenomenon always cloaks itself in the technology and beliefs of the present day. Hundreds of years ago, it used the language of fairies and magic.
And today, it speaks to us in the language of aliens and spacecraft.
But think about this, 100 years from now, when our current ideas of spaceships seem as outdated and ridiculous as an 1897 dirigible powered by telegraph battery juice, what mask will the phenomenon wear for you then?